This is Wyoming. The least populated state in America, and one of the only places left in the country where the wildlife still outnumbers the people. Pronghorn antelope alone are believed to exceed the entire human population, and in some counties a grizzly bear remains a more likely sight than a stoplight. Some states are measured by their cities or their coastlines. Wyoming is measured by the distance between one porch light and the next. Roughly the size of the United Kingdom, Wyoming rises out of the high plains toward the glacier-carved spires of the Tetons. Cut through by the geothermal wilderness of Yellowstone, a landscape so open that the sky itself seems to swallow the ground beneath it. This is high, dry country, most of it sitting a mile or more above sea level, where the wind rarely stops and the horizon rarely closes in. Winters here are not a season so much as a test. Temperatures can drop to 20 and 30 below, and wind alone has been known to flip trailers on perfectly straight roads. Summers, by contrast, arrive fast and green, drawing cattle up into high mountain pastures before the first snow closes the passes again. By any reasonable logic, a place this harsh should have emptied out generations ago. And yet people still rise before dawn here to feed cattle in weather that would send most of the country indoors. Not out of necessity, but by choice. Wyoming's population has stayed thin by any modern standard, held together less by industry or opportunity than by a shared, stubborn attachment to open land and to doing things the hard way. What has that solitude taught the people who choose to stay that the rest of us have never had the chance to learn? We're glad you're here with us to find out. Before we head further into the wild, we'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from tonight? Drop it in the comments, and while you're there, tell us one wide-open place you've always wanted to see for yourself. Wyoming covers roughly 97,800 square miles, comparable in area to the entire United Kingdom or to Uganda, yet its population hovers around 584,000 people, making it the least populous state in the country. Density here works out to about 6 people per square mile, the lowest figure in the contiguous United States, and in some counties that number drops into fractions. There are no chain store corridors stretching between towns, no stoplights for 100 miles in some directions, no billboards competing for attention on roads that see more mule deer than traffic. Cheyenne, the state capital, began not as an act of settlement, but as an act of railroad logistics, founded in 1867 as a supply point along the Union Pacific Line. Its name borrowed from the Cheyenne people who had long moved through the region. It remains the largest city in Wyoming, and it is still home to fewer than 70,000 people, a population that would rank as a modest suburb almost anywhere else in the country. Wyoming carries a few genuine legal oddities for a place this size. It was the first territory or state in the country to to grant women the right to vote in 1869, more than 50 years before the rest of the nation followed, and it elected the country's first female governor, Nellie Taylor Ross, in 1925. It also levies no state income tax, a policy woven into its identity as a place that expects residents to answer to the land more than to any office. County lines here were drawn generously, almost apologetically. Some counties are larger than entire New England states, yet contain fewer residents than a single downtown apartment block elsewhere. Distance is not an inconvenience in Wyoming so much as a structural fact of daily life. Ranch children in some districts ride a school bus for 2 hours each way, not because the system is inefficient, but because the nearest school genuinely sits that far off. Mail carriers on rural routes can log more than 100 miles a day, delivering to a scattering of boxes along fence lines. There is a kind of dignity that develops around this, an unspoken agreement that isolation is simply the toll charged for the amount of sky overhead. The landscape itself resists easy description. Drive east to west, and the high plains, dry, gold-brown, rippling with wind-bent grass, give way without warning to the Wind River Range, a wall of granite peaks scraping 13,000 feet into a sky so clear it seems to have no ceiling at all. Clouds move fast here, shadows racing across the sagebrush like something alive, and at dusk the whole plain turns the color of a struck match before the cold comes down like a lid. Beneath Wyoming's grazing land sits an industrial engine most of the country never sees. The Powder River Basin, in the northeastern corner of the state, produces more coal than any other region in the United States, enough, in peak years, to supply a substantial share of the nation's electricity from a handful of open pit mines few Americans could locate on a map. Alongside it run vast reserves of natural gas and oil, pumped from wells scattered across the high desert basins, and deposits of trona, a mineral refined into soda ash, so extensive that the area around Green River supplies a significant share of the world's supply of the compound used in everything from glass to detergent. This is a state built, in large part, on extraction, and that fact shapes its towns as directly as its geology does. Gillette, at the heart of the Powder River Basin, grew from a rail stop into a genuine boomtown, its fortunes rising and falling with commodity prices in a rhythm locals have learned to plan around rather than resist. Housing developments appear almost overnight during a boom and sit half-finished during a bust. School enrollment swells and tracks with the price of a ton of coal traded thousands of miles away. The wind that batters the plains, once purely a hardship, has become an export of its own. Wyoming's sustained gusts rank among the strongest and most consistent in the country, and in recent years the same corridors that make daily life difficult have drawn large-scale wind development. Turbines rising along ridge lines that ranchers once crossed only on horseback. It is an odd inheritance, a landscape that punished settlers for a century, now generating a second income for the descendants of those same families, one lease payment at a time. What ties it all together is a working relationship with the ground itself that few Americans share anymore. A rancher's neighbor might be a coal miner. A wind technician might spend weekends helping brand cattle. In Wyoming, energy isn't an abstraction debated at a distance. It's a paycheck, a skyline, and, for many families, the reason the town they grew up in still exists at all. To live in a Wyoming town is to live inside a different arithmetic of daily life. Not blocks, but miles. Not neighbors next door, but neighbors down the road. Towns like Jackson, Sheridan, Lander, and Pinnedale are built low and practical, timber and stone facades, deep pitched roofs to shed heavy snow, wide streets designed less for foot traffic than for trucks, trailers, and the occasional herd crossing on its way to summer pasture. The architecture isn't decorative, it's an answer to weather that doesn't negotiate. What's absent tells its own story. There are counties without a single traffic light, towns where the nearest movie theater, hospital, or big box store is 90 minutes away by design, not neglect. Crime rates in much of rural Wyoming sit far below national averages, less because of policing than because of proximity. Everyone tends to know everyone, and anonymity is a luxury the population is too small to afford. The people who end up staying tend to be self-selecting in a very specific way. Wyoming does not attract those looking for convenience. It attracts ranchers whose families have worked the same land for 4 or 5 generations, retirees drawn to silence over stimulation, and a smaller, steadier stream of newcomers, outdoor guides, artists, remote workers, who came for a season and found they couldn't leave the scale of the place behind. What they share, more than politics or profession, is a tolerance for distance, the acceptance that convenience will always be traded for room to breathe. Community, in a place this thin on people, tends to organize itself around a handful of fixed points rather than dozens of institutions. The feed store doubles as a bulletin board for the entire county. The high school gymnasium on a Friday night can pull in a share of the town's population that would be unthinkable anywhere denser. Not out of civic obligation, but because there is genuinely little competing for anyone's evening. Churches, grange halls, and volunteer fire departments carry a social weight here that's hard to translate to a bigger city, simply because so much of daily connection has to be built, deliberately, out of so little raw material. Wyoming is one of the only places in the country where the wildlife population regularly exceeds the human one. There are more pronghorn antelope in the state than there are Wyomingites, closer to twice as many, and the greater Yellowstone ecosystem holds one of the last strongholds of grizzly bears in the lower 48. Alongside wolves reintroduced to Yellowstone National Park in 1995, after a 70-year absence. Coexistence here is not an abstract value, it's a set of daily practices. Ranchers use range riders and guard dogs to keep livestock safe from wolves and grizzlies rather than relying solely on fencing. Hikers in bear country carry pepper spray as routinely as water. And school buses in some rural districts factor bear activity into their route timing during salmon and berry seasons. None of it is theoretical. It shapes when people walk their dogs, where they let children play, and how they store garbage. Widen the lens and the ecosystem only grows stranger and richer. Bison herds moving across steaming geyser basins as if the ground weren't alive beneath them. Bald eagles fishing the Snake River. Elk gathering by the thousands each winter at the National Elk Refuge outside Jackson. Moose wading through willow flats at dusk with an indifference that suggests they know exactly whose land this really is. Trout streams run cold and clear enough to see gravel 40 feet down, drawing anglers from across the world to rivers most Wyomingites fish without a second thought on an ordinary evening. And then there is the state's quiet superlative. The pronghorn's seasonal migration along what biologists call the path of the pronghorn, a route stretching more than 150 miles from summer range near Grand Teton to winter range in the Green River Basin. Recognized as the longest land migration corridor for large mammals anywhere in the continental United States. It is a route these animals have followed generation after generation, since long before the roads, fences, and gas fields that now cross it existed. And in places where the corridor narrows to a bottleneck barely a mile wide, wildlife officials have installed specially designed overpasses and underpasses, engineered structures built for no other purpose than letting an ancient migration continue uninterrupted beneath a modern highway. Not every relationship between residents and wildlife is peaceful, and no honest account pretends otherwise. Ranchers lose calves to wolves and grizzlies most years, and the debate over how much protection predators deserve versus how much livelihood a rancher is owed remains genuinely unresolved, argued over in county meetings and state legislative sessions alike. Living alongside animals this large and this capable of killing you is not a romantic arrangement. It's a negotiated one, renewed every season. If Wyoming has a single sensory signature, it is not the cold or the altitude, it's the wind. In towns like Cheyenne, Rawlins, and Arlington, sustained gusts of 40, 50, even 70 miles an hour are not storm events, they're Tuesday. It moves in constantly, scouring the plains, rattling windows in their frames, occasionally strong enough to tip empty semi-trailers on the interstate and close highways for hours at a time. For newcomers, the disorientation is immediate and physical, a low, ceaseless roar that some describe as exhausting before they ever get used to it. A force that makes simple tasks like walking to a mailbox or fueling a truck feel like small negotiations with the atmosphere. Adaptation here is both practical and psychological. Ranchers plant windbreak lines of trees around homesteads decades before they're needed, knowing the payoff belongs to whoever inherits the place next. Buildings are engineered low and anchored deep, and residents develop something less tangible, a kind of internal quiet that lets them tune the noise out, the way people near train tracks stop hearing the trains. Longtime Wyomingites often describe a strange stillness that settles over them precisely because the wind never does, an odd peace born from something that refuses to pause. The reward, when it comes, is unexpected. That same wind scrubs the sky clean, producing some of the clearest air and starkest night skies left in the country. A reward residents describe not as compensation for the hardship, but as its direct byproduct. Stargazing in rural Wyoming needs no special equipment, no drive to a remote overlook. The Milky Way is simply visible from most backyards on a clear night. A version of the sky most of the country has to travel hours to remember exists. Longtime residents will sometimes admit, almost sheepishly, that a trip to a quieter, windless place leaves them oddly unsettled. The silence itself becomes the strange thing. And each year, in the narrow window between winter's grip and true summer, a gentler phenomenon arrives. Warm Chinook winds sweeping down off the mountains, capable of raising temperatures by 30 or 40 degrees in a matter of hours, melting snowpack almost overnight and giving ranchers a brief, welcome reprieve before the next front rolls back in. Old-timers read the Chinook the way sailors read a change in swell, a warm, dry gust cutting through a January cold snap, and suddenly the whole town seems to exhale at once. Wyoming's connection to the wider world runs through a single, radical idea that land could belong to no one and everyone at once. In 1872, the US government designated Yellowstone as the world's first national park, a legal category that did not exist anywhere on Earth before that signature. Built on the notion that some landscapes were too significant to be sold, fenced, or mined. That idea has since been exported to more than 100 countries, reshaping how nations everywhere relate to their own wild spaces. Nearby, Devil's Tower became the country's first national monument in 1906, protected under a law written specifically because of it. A stark volcanic formation sacred to multiple Plains tribes long before it carried any federal designation at all. What does it mean that the modern conservation movement effectively began here, in one of the emptiest corners of the country? What does it say that the instinct to protect land arrived not in a crowded place, but in one where almost no one was watching? A century and a half later, the park still draws millions of visitors a year to witness geothermal features found almost nowhere else on the planet. Geysers, hot springs, a supervolcano quietly breathing beneath it all. Wyoming's global reach doesn't end with conservation. Every summer, Cheyenne Frontier Days, self-billed as the daddy of them all, draws competitors and spectators from across the world to what has grown into one of the largest outdoor rodeos on the planet, running continuously since 1897. It is, in a sense, the state exporting its own working culture as spectacle. The same skills a rancher uses on an ordinary Tuesday, repackaged once a year as sport, broadcast to an audience that will likely never rope a calf themselves. What does it mean that a state most of the country can barely place on a map has shaped both how the world thinks about protecting land and how the world imagines the American cowboy? What does it say that both exports, conservation and cowboy culture, trace back to the same wide-open, mostly empty ground? If one landmark can carry the full weight of what Wyoming represents, it is Old Faithful. The geyser that has erupted with startling regularity for as long as recorded observation has existed, sending scalding water more than 100 feet into the air roughly every 90 minutes. Its purpose, if it can be said to have one, is simply to demonstrate that something this powerful can also be this reliable. It exists specifically here because Yellowstone sits atop one of the largest active volcanic systems on the continent. A shallow reservoir of magma that superheats groundwater until it forces its way to the surface in violent, rhythmic bursts. Nowhere else in the country offers geology quite this exposed, this audible, this alive. In 1959, a major earthquake in the region altered the timing and behavior of numerous geysers across the park. Some falling permanently silent, yet Old Faithful adjusted only slightly and kept erupting. A detailed park geologists still point to as evidence of just how deep and stable its plumbing runs beneath the surface chaos above. Locals tend to regard it with a mixture of pride and quiet possessiveness, less as a tourist spectacle than as a reminder, 90 minutes at a time, of what sits directly beneath their state. Most visitors leave Wyoming picturing cowboys and geysers. Unaware that the state's largest Native American community lives on the Wind River Reservation, home to both the Eastern Shoshone and Northern Arapaho nations. Two tribes with distinct histories and, at points, deep historical friction, sharing a single reservation since 1878 in an arrangement that was never entirely their choice. The juxtaposition is immediate on arrival: powwow grounds beside working cattle ranches, tribal college campuses a short drive from some of the poorest counties in the state, centuries-old ceremonial traditions continuing alongside modern oil and gas development on tribal land. Chief Washake, the Eastern Shoshone leader who negotiated the reservation's original boundaries, remains a towering figure in the region's memory, one of the few native leaders of his era who managed to secure a homeland his people would keep, though at a cost neither side has ever fully agreed on. The tension here is real and unresolved. water rights disputes with the state, economic disparity relative to Wyoming's wealthier ranching counties, and an ongoing effort to preserve Shoshone and Arapaho language and ceremony against the same forces of distance and depopulation that shaped the rest of rural Wyoming. Language revitalization programs now run out of tribal schools. Teaching children words their own grandparents were once punished for speaking. A quiet, deliberate act of repair playing out largely outside the state's usual tourism narrative. It is not a story with a clean ending, and the people living it would likely resent one being imposed. What's clear, though, is that Wyoming's oldest continuous human presence isn't a museum exhibit or a historical footnote. It's an active, self-governing community negotiating its own future on land it has occupied for far longer than the state itself has existed. Beneath Wyoming's grass and sagebrush lies one of the most legible geological records on the continent. The Bighorn and Wind River Mountains expose rock layers over 2.5 billion years old, nearly half the age of the planet itself, thrust upward by tectonic collisions and then carved into their current shapes by glaciers that advanced and retreated across the region long before any human presence. The Teton Range, among the youngest major mountain ranges in North America, rose along a single fault line with no foothills to soften its ascent, which is why it appears to erupt directly out of the valley floor rather than build toward its peaks gradually. This is a landscape that moves on its own timeline, and always has. Glaciers in the high basins still creep and carve in the ordinary rhythm they've followed for millennia. Rock slides periodically reshape canyon walls, and rivers carve new channels through soft sedimentary rock each spring melt. None of it is unusual or alarming. It is simply the landscape doing what it has always done, on a schedule measured in centuries rather than seasons. Fossil hunters know the state for a different kind of deep time entirely. The Badlands and basins of central Wyoming have yielded some of the most complete dinosaur skeletons ever found in North America, along with fossilized fish beds so fine-grained that entire ancient ecosystems, leaves, insects, whole schools of fish, sit preserved in layers of rock a person can split open by hand. It is a landscape that keeps records at every scale, from mountain ranges measured in billions of years down to single fossilized moments measured in fractions of a second, frozen mid-motion 50 million years ago. For residents, this deep time backdrop becomes strangely personal. Ranchers speak of specific outcrops the way others speak of family photographs, landmarks their grandparents used to navigate before roads existed, boulders that mark a property line, a canyon a father taught a daughter to read weather by. Living inside geology this old and this visible tends to recalibrate a person's sense of scale. Problems that feel large elsewhere shrink considerably next to rock that has been sitting in the same place for 2 billion years.